Guys, I fucked up. I don't know what to do. Okay, calm down. This is not a big deal. Let me explain. A while ago, Alexander Avella released a video about AI, and I thought at first that I agree with some of the points in that video, so I decided to talk about it on a Discord server, making some sort of proof that AI could possibly aid me in a budget to help me with my creative projects. The problem with this is that I missed a point of the entire video and the whole AI discourse completely, because I didn't even bother to finish off watching the video. The glaring problem with this is that AI, while a useful technology for a few in some cases, I know this is going to be kind of a hot take, the majority of its use is relegated to a whopping 99% of exploitation, replacement of human labor, and creation of AI-generated stuff for profit incentives, which, to stop beating around the bush, it's pretty bad. The subject of AI itself is pretty icky to talk about without having your head rolling on one side or the other, because while there's the minimal possibility that the technology in the right hands can benefit a lot of people and can be used for good and not replacing artists or labor, it is still designed and falling by and into the wrong hands of big tech. It has never been proven to be a tool to be designed for good, at least nearly never, and it proves that this tool is primarily designed, as it recently is conceived in the last years, to exploit, steal labor, and for profit incentives. Avella's video missed the mark there, sadly. While a few points of the video might be agreeable, I still is just as sloppy in execution, and I got berated on a particular Discord for believing some preset delusional beliefs about the supposed points of that video, considering also that the video itself got berated in the comment section as well. It's a shame that the career of someone who has been gaining popularity from being a victim of James Somerton's plagiarism has ruined his own career by just justifying somewhat a plagiarism engine. But that's not the point of this very video of mine. I'm going to tackle a more serious subject that somewhat spawned out of this whole learning process, and with as much seriousness as, you know. But regardless, like me, you might have posed yourself a series of similar questions when pondering upon this disaster of a video. What if Avella's research is wrong or sloppy? What if a great majority of video essays on YouTube have been wrong or sloppy research? What if these content creators by chance of Jim Flint's radical magical farts, who we've seen mostly as parasocial saviors of humanity, or just as bad as Donald J. Trump or Elon Musk? YouTube video essays, let's face it, tend to be consumed solely for entertainment after all. They hold no educational value normally, especially in such a brief format as in a YouTube video, and if they do, it's just an anomaly in the system. I'm sorry to tell you, honey, but this is a universally agreed in an academic community for a while. It's usual to pose yourself these questions, considering we live in an era where we don't know what's true or false or what's right or wrong, and that's where we tackle the icky subject of in the last years or decades even, post-truth has been a menace to society, led by misinformation, lies, and a whole political polarization that marks so many absolute dogshit conflicts with even more hostility. But it's not that quite simple. The basic definition of post-truth, agreed by at least like Lee McIntyre's book about the subject, which I have right here, is characterized by the prioritization of emotions and beliefs over objective facts, a phenomenon exploited by capitalist elites that distort reality and control public perception, to divide per se. Here is where the public makes their feelings and beliefs a top priority in their public consciousness above all reason and logical facts. As Ben Shapiro will put it, feelings don't care about your facts. I think I made it clearly evident in our previous video about AI deepfakes that the elites just are purposefully making the public dumb and distracted enough to advance their goals, but my biggest regret is that at that point, I was barely scratching the surface of the iceberg. Now, let's just say that I don't want to make this video, however, trying to, at the end, the usual leftist video essay crap conclusion of, oh, actually, the problem is capitalism. That's already obvious. Very obvious. Too obvious, in fact. We don't need to explore that particular idea any further already. A great part of the blame might be on big tech, capitalism, or hell, even BlackRock or Vanguard, the two biggest stakeholders in the whole of the world economy. But I want to show you as well the other part of the blame. Me, you, and everyone else, especially me. This video won't be easy, especially not easy to digest, I believe, because the majority of people have it understandably complicated to not be subjected to these strong emotions or beliefs, and I say that as a neurodivergent gill baby. But this is a video about post-truth, so let's dive into that. Political, religious, or public figures in society have always made propaganda since times immemorial, even by lying. It's not just that the methods gotten more sophisticated over time. Even the monarchs of the 19th century couldn't avoid making you live in their own version of reality in some way or another. But as far as I understand, there came a bit of a thing called postmodernism a while after, which most likely changed the paradigm of politics for a bit. By my basic understanding, postmodernism has a bit of the blame on this whole political paradigm, since the idea of postmodernism attacked the idea of a universal truth, per se. So it was pretty glaring that right-wing zealots will weaponize at some degree said postmodernism, well, attacking postmodernism on the left? Wow, so much for attacking postmodernism as a fascist, eh? Look, although I'm explaining to you some basic understanding of postmodernism, I don't know as much about postmodernism though. This is my basic idea of what it is. I am a transgender internet clown, and not Abigail Thorne. In the last decades, the evolution of propaganda per se through diverse means will intensify such a thing. The printing press, such as the newspapers, evolved to the radio, where the people will for the first time listen to politicians and know how to speak. The radio evolved to television, where we will see politicians' faces for the first time. And then the television evolved to the internet, where we will have a whole entire database of knowledge at our fingertips from the ease of being anywhere in the world. Although all this media evolution though, it was clearly evident the situation of politics became more evidently partisan. Not more partisan, because that's been a thing since ages, but more obvious that it was being partisan at first glance. The thing is, there was a thing in printed press back in the day called impartiality and journalistic standards, which was at some point agreed upon a while back, but with the coming of TV, things were different. By the time things like the Vietnam War or the Bay of Pigs crisis or the Gulf War crisis happened, a lot of television networks magnates realized they will make higher ratings and profit through the means of becoming more partisan, hence sensationalizing their media coverage towards a certain political leaning. CNN will become the prime center-left network of sorts, Fox News came for the right-wing politics, and so on and so forth. Not that sensationalizing news was anything new, and one can recall the Remember the Maine that caused the Spanish-American War back then, but it was glaring that there was a sensationalistic polarization of world news for financial gains and ratings, and the printed press was pretty much left behind. Imagine that with the internet now. So really, is it all about going out on the internet nowadays and tell lies?
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Not really. Here's the Oxford definition of post-truth as a bit of a reminder. Relating to circumstances in which people respond more to feelings and beliefs than to facts. Television networks like Fox News didn't need to outright lie to get their coverage on certain world events. All they needed to do is to cherry-pick certain parts of facts that align with the feelings and beliefs of their existing audiences, ideology, or people. Post-truth isn't necessarily about lying. It's about aligning certain parts of reality that match our pre-existing beliefs or feelings. Let's just put a case example, just in case. Say for the sake of argument, I tell you a lie that I'm a certified forklift driver. The chances are that not everyone will believe me on that, and it will be easily debunked by anyone else. But if I were to pick a certain part of an academic study or a piece of paper here that said at some point that I might have been driving a forklift, now more people will believe it stronger because these pieces of facts align with my audience's preset beliefs of me being a certified forklift driver. But it's not that simple for that matter. Let's just explain what's really going on here. How does it happen? There's a couple of videos I want to use as a basis for this, aside of some other ones, one of which is Innuendo Studios' Alright Playbook series, The Ship of Theseus. The Ship of Theseus presupposes that this ship from a guy called Theseus and you get to replace each individual plank of wood of the ship by a new and pristine one. The allegory asks a question: at what point is the ship itself from Theseus? At what individual plank of wood do we consider the ship from Theseus himself? By that means, it asks a question: at what point of the narrative do we consider a true statement? If I were to say I'm a certified forklift driver, the part forklift driver will go to I drove a forklift once, and certified will go to I have a piece of paper that I drove a forklift once, and by a piece of paper it will go to a restraining order from a forklift company. Presuppose then on some on Twitter or X the everything app tweets "Each bomber guy dogs me." By each bomber guy, if you do enough research, you get an employee of each bomber guy, which goes then into a public contractor of each bomber guy. And then if you dismantle the part where it says dogs me, then you go to reveal my real name, which will later go into like that tweet where someone revealed my real name. Therefore, the real ship of Theseus here, or the real argument, is a public contractor of each bomber guy like a tweet where someone revealed my real name. But what clicks more with someone's raw emotional feelings and beliefs? Is it this late statement, or is it H bomber guy dogs me? The latter will have much a bigger impact because it draws more the rage, the raw emotions of anybody. It is inflammatory. The video itself ends with the phrase, "People will try to control the truth, but the truth leaves an essence behind." This is not outright lying, this is a half-truth. In post-truth discourse, people will control the truth in such a way that it will transform it into a witty catchphrase that enriches the public. Another video in the series, which was hosted by Abigail Thorne of PhilosophyTube, presents a similar dilemma. Double wrong. If I were to tell you I'm a certified forklift driver, and there's a study saying that, presumably you will point out that it's not right and that the study doesn't say exactly that, giving further reading beyond the abstract of the paper. But the paper itself doesn't act as a proof. It acts as an authority to hold me on a position of power in which such discussion, like a safety blanket, that will occur when I have to fall back. You know, when at a workplace there's an anti-bullying policy that employers you point out to and say, "We're committed to not doing that," but yet the problem still persists and no one is doing anything about it? The scientific paper presumably saying that I'm a certified forklift driver acts as a presumed authority confirming my set of beliefs in some way or another. Again, what I just did is just grab certain fragments of facts that align with my belief system. I did a ship of Theseus again into sounding like a final coherent argument. This is a recurring theme in propagandas in general. I just collage fragments of reality itself into what I believe is the truth, and by now postmodernism haters might have already left the room by now. The end quote of this latter video ends, "This is not a technique for winning arguments, it's a technique for starting them." This aligns well with post-truth discourse in a couple examples here. Let me explain. According to the book Merchants of Doubt by Naomi Oreskes and Eric Conway, we go back to the 1950s debates about tobacco consumption and whether tobacco consumption leads to cancer, which it does, by the way. Right now, you might know the tactics of a certain research group called the Tobacco Industry Research Committee. They published certain privately funded studies which became part of the AstroTurf debate about tobacco consumption. By the way, lots of these studies were complete fabrications and were designed just for that, for tobacco industries to keep people consuming their products so they can drive further profits to the industry. This is capitalism, let's say. By just causing a debate, you sow doubt amongst the public, enough to buy your time before a reasonable government enacts a ban or at least a regulation on your industry that costs you money, so you hold a certain power still. This is still a tactic to hold your power up, by starting arguments in favor of buying your time before your power gets contested. Oreskes and Conway similarly describe a similar situation here with climate denialism and how do we get here. A lot of the AstroTurf debates on climate change started with privately funded research from the Heartland Institute, which coincidentally had its first years being funded by tobacco giant Philip Morris. How funny. But then years passed by, and between the 1980s and the 2010s and so on, it became sponsored by a bunch of corporations such as ExxonMobil and the Koch brothers. What a convenient group of villains here. Regardless, this is how oil baron companies buy time and hold power, by just astroturfing a debate on climate change big enough so we waste time while our planet is slowly but surely dying beneath our feet and above our heads, burning as the fumes of the fossil fuel industry further pollute the planet even further. And this comes into play because these tactics play to particular pieces of human psychology. People believe there's no such thing as climate change or tobacco-induced cancer because these enable preconceived beliefs in a lot of people, especially considering two particular psychological traits in human brains: the cognitive bias and the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Let's explain those. Let's start on the cognitive bias itself. All of us got our egos, and when our egos are hurt in some way or capacity, it is part of our human lizard brains that we play on the defensive about it. A lot of our beliefs are rooted deeply in our egos as well, so when a belief gets downed on us, we have to defend our egos as well. Okay, so here's an analogy to better understand it. Say for the sake of argument, you are in a party with Connie, your beloved, much beloved girlfriend, and you love her so much that you think she's a cool person and that she's really happy dancing around at the party. Then someone comes around and tells you that Connie is just being drunk, stumbling around in an awful dance of sorts, and being annoying to partygoers. Do you agree with that sentiment? Does your brain work in that way? No, of course not. You enter the 5 stages of grief, particularly starting with denial. How dare you say about that Connie? She's a wonderful person. She's the love of my life. Don't you dare say that about her. Except, when you face the facts, you realize Connie's drunk on beer and cocaine, she's annoying to partygoers, and worst of all, in fact, that dance she was doing, she was stumbling around like a drunken moron. This is cognitive bias at play. Our brains are deeply rooted in our core beliefs and ideas that any minimal challenging point of view will get us on the defensive like a hurt mammal. This is how our brains work. It's lizard brain stuff, there's no denying about it. The same way cognitive biases get exploited a lot in a post-truth discourse, and on both sides, and believe me, I don't want to invoke the both sides coward centrist argument here still, are to blame on this. Even the left. When I criticize someone like, say, Hassan Biker on that instance for being an uppity asshole at times, like I did a couple of videos back then, his audience's cognitive bias gets triggered and it will jump at your jugular like angry leopards and play on the defensive. Even then, let's face it, Hassan Biker in reality isn't the best leftist out there, nor is anyone like Ethan Klein or to some degree, even myself. I have a cognitive bias even for the Karl Marx and Kropotkin team. Any dissenting idea away from my ideological beliefs deserves to be sent to the gulag. Therefore, I have a cognitive bias for the red team.
I'm a communist!
The right wing tends to play with this psychological mumbo jumbo too, because a lot of right wing thinking revolves on a preset of already established beliefs that, believe it or not, are not always rooted with reality itself. Cognitive bias is a lot of self-deceit by those means, because we love ourselves as humans so much with our lizard brains that we don't want to take any dissenting opinion of ourselves or our beliefs anywhere in the slightest. No one likes that. It's part of our natural brains. We're preconditioned biologically even to be that close-minded. And it applies even to a lot of ideological standpoints such as our consumer choices. That's why buyer's remorse later exists, to politics or COVID-19. But especially in the subject of AI, like I had with Abella's video. I probably had a set of preconceived beliefs about AI as well, and Abella did seem to confirm those at first with my cozy blanket of safety is there. But the only problem as well is that anti-AI people also have their preconceived cognitive bias. But let's move on from that and explain the other side of what post-truth exploits in human psychology the most. The Dunning-Kruger Effect. Or as I want to call it, the Sargon of Akkad Effect.
You think that you are more intelligent than you are, and that is a difficult place for you.
In this day and age, there's a whole heap of experts in not just the political field, but also the philosophical or scientific fields, such as Sargon of Akkad, Jordan B. Peterson, Joe Rogan, Sam Hyde, Hassan Biker, Cenk Uygur, Short Fat Otaku, even Cesaro's favorite Spanish lolcow. You know what all of these have in common? The Dunning-Kruger Effect. Which by all means, and I mean to be transparent here, I am as well a victim of it. maybe I'm getting too ahead of myself. The point is, common ground people below these mofos can also be victims of their own Dunning-Kruger Effect as well. The Dunning-Kruger Effect goes like this. There's a certain point in human intellect about a certain particular topic where our confidence about the topic skyrockets and we believe we're smarter about that topic than we actually are. The problem with this is that people who are already knowledgeable entirely about that particular topic are not confident at all, if not at least way less confident about their own expertise. And people who have no knowledge about a topic at all are neither that confident. It's similar to being the uncanny valley of intellectualism, but instead of going downwards, it is a peak of confidence. Let's put it like this. I am not a certified forklift driver at all. There are no qualifications for me that say that, nor any solid proof that I can drive a forklift safely. But because I drove a forklift once, maybe twice in my lifetime, I know the bare bones basic of how to basically drive a forklift, even without any safety standards. I've built somewhat a really high confidence that I'm already a certified forklift driver. Does that make me a certified forklift driver or an expert in driving forklifts? No, not at all. But the confidence alone makes us have such beliefs that we, like I said earlier, might enter a certain state of cognitive bias, and then a conflicting idea pointing out that I'm not a certified forklift driver is an attack on my ego, ergo, an attack on my person and my beliefs. Similarly, I have a similar problem when learning new languages in an app like Duolingo, where I learn the bare basics of speaking German and the sort, but when I confront it with reality itself, I cannot speak any further than Die Wurst ist lecker or Du bist ein hässliches Dummkopf Mann. Guten Morgen, Priya. Guten Morgen, Beck. Wo sind meine Schlüssel? Deine Schlüssel? Ja, ich muss zur Arbeit fahren. Ich brauche meine Autoschlüssel. Dear Lord. I think I did enough explaining the two main psychological traits post-truth discourse tend to explore the most. So I want to explain in my bare knowledge how does this happen in reality. So let's study some case examples here. I think I'm not going to repeat myself on what I said about the prior cases on the tobacco debate or the climate change debate for that matter, but I think these two cases exemplify so much about how modern discourse works, especially when looking at Trump and Republican base. The idea here is that creating privately funded research to cherry-pick certain parts of science, which by the way can be mostly likely easily debunked anyway, that confirms things like tobacco doesn't cause cancer or climate change is not real, and then creating enough confusion amongst the common ground populace with this nonsense debate buys enough time for people in power like Trump to stay in power uncontested. It's a typical bread and circus tactic. Like I said, it's not to win arguments, it's to start them pretty much. It really goes back into the aforementioned ship of Theseus dilemma a bit, because at what point do you consider most of Trump's statements and their individual parts truth, or just a distorted version of truth, if not a lie? The basis is to create allies based on scattered parts of truthful and factual evidence here and there that conveniently align with their worldview. In a video from Thugslime called Fascists Will Waste Your Time, they argue, however, that reactionaries like Trump and the sort know that what we're saying is wrong and or not entirely factual, and they still don't care. Some might argue this is just an appeal to their own beliefs and emotions about a particular topic, given their cognitive bias, but mainly this is a way to hold their higher ground of power by sowing useless debates about anything and sowing a doubt amongst the populace, knowing full well that the science and facts are settled already. This is, believe it or not, also a problem in the left wing, because you want to know what we call that's comedy. Leftist comedy is at most post-truth discourse as well, intentional or not. But we're not just reserved to talking about traditional media in a sense, like television or newspapers, but we need to highlight especially how dangerous this is with the arrival of the digital era, more so the internet and social media. In a Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma, they explore the dangers of social media posts in terms of political politicization and extremism especially, and how social media corporations, despite all of this, just simply don't care as long as their pockets are lined up. That is very usual in capitalism, but this is clearly evident in the post-truth era because social media is very dangerous for amplifying post-truth statements, even more because of social media recommendation algorithms and the echo chambers, which is the byproduct of hooking people to their apps enough to generate ad revenue for these platforms. Leftists also have this problem of echo chambers in a way. That's called blue sky. And look, I love blue sky, but if we want to argue that there's a problem with echo chambers, you might want to look into that. Okay, so let's explain how social media platforms post this shit. Cocomelon, for the sake of argument. Cocomelon is a horrible YouTube channel for kids. It's considered the fentanyl of YouTube's children's-friendly content. The channel, given its video editing tactics and retention tactics, is designed to retain as much attention and engagement from your little fucking kids as much as possible. The camera angles change a lot so children don't look away from the screen. The music in there is catchy and eerily attention demanding, with constant tones of distractions into the content itself. You just need to look at the starting noise at the beginning of each of their videos. If you're a parent of kids who are subjected to this type of content, you'll know that your child will run towards the screen once they hear this sound, because for them it's like the sound of injecting a needle of heroin into a drug addict. Kids associate that sound with instant dopamine hits, and soon they'll be hooked on the screen with those videos long enough that if you dare to take away their screen from them while watching it, they start to cry or throw a tantrum. These videos consider viewer attention like that, or even engagement like that, as a way to boost themselves in the YouTube algorithm. Because the more engagement or viewer attention a video gets, the more it gets recommended to viewers. It's basic YouTube shit. Everyone, including myself, is subjected to the same rules here on YouTube. But then you look at motherfuckers like Mr. Beast, basically using the same attention-grabbing psychological tactics, not to mention the exploitative business Mr. Beast is actually, to gain retention and engagement from more grown people who can't help a bit of dopamine. RageBait, similarly, on any other social media, hook your attention and emotions towards it, especially anger, and get you inundated with quotes, retweets, reposts, likes, even quote tags, so the algorithm boosts them even more on Twitter, Facebook, and so on. And speaking of Facebook, you know all that AI-generated slop on Facebook? That's also to blame for this problem. I told you some sad sod to not quote dunk someone on Blue Sky because it only helps exacerbate the problem. And then at the bottom of the food chain, there are reaction channels, the bottom feeders by excellence, who grab a certain topic that's easily researchable, sensationalize it, and misreport it on obvious, easily debunkable shit. The money always makes itself. Now, imagine all of this combined, set in the world of politics. It's sad to say even that this affects all sides of the political spectrum, because every side has their own victims of the Dunning-Kruger Effect. But no, people like Hassan Piker and Ethan Klein will not save you from this information. They're as bad or worse than right-wing disinformation propagandas in terms of sensationalizing news and politics. They're children's entertainers and masquerading as political commentators. In a previous video I did about the PlayStation Star sound, which totally didn't derive into a rabbit hole about SEO farming in AI, I commented on how old tricks like keyword stuffing and ChatGPT help sadly distort reality online in a way where we don't know what's true or false online. But I think I probably am missing a key particular details about this. For instance, lately social media sites, especially like Facebook and Google, design ad placements on their platforms to be sneaky enough to be mistaken for regular content. I'm pretty sure you noticed this too on Twitter or X, the everything app, where despite the glaring little text saying ad, you can tell ads from regular tweets lately. This way, not only social media and other sorts of online media as well cannot be distinguished often by many people if they were sponsored articles or not, or if they're true or false. But you know what also tends to be advertised a lot on these platforms? Politics. A lot of political ads, even with disinformation in them, and they sneak by just not as regular social media ads, but as regular content on these social media platforms for that matter. For that matter, when we go back to the topic of Russians and Putin, they didn't really hack the Irish elections literally. All they did was sneak by regular social media advertising, using the tools social media provides like normal to spread ads and content that contain this information. to sow discord amongst the US populace, to sow confusion and doubt, kinda like the tobacco industry and the Koch brothers did. And in another video I did about how social media helped Trump win 2 elections, I explained how this all took a big part in populist right-wing victories across the globe, not just limited to Trump. Let's face it, a lot of social media have right-wing bias, evidenced by this video and others like it, and it's deeply rooted in that sort of Reagan-era sentiment, pretty much. But, remember that stuff I said about echo chambers? Most echo chambers on social media are made because the social media's content is served to each person through recommendation algorithms so custom tailored to our data and preferences. And surely these platforms love our data so much, they get a whole entire heap of it. And so much so, they attract perfectly 100%, if not nearly 100%, any user on these platforms. Like an old cigarette commercial said, "We're gonna get ya." It's no doubt that there's a lot of privacy concerns about gathering this much data, and it's also no wonder why a lot of these consider spyware tier stuff. I guess we didn't learn our lesson from Bonzi there, folks. They all do this to serve ads on users, and they don't care, because social media CEOs already have the interest of their advertisers, who pay these social media CEOs a whole heap of money to serve ads in there, no matter what. And as long as money is involved, no one will give a shit there. So, what can we say about this? Of course, the obvious thing is that a lot of the problems like these tend to have a common source, like, oh, what does this stupid and evil shit happen? Oh, money, of course! But usual JMAA TV tradition tends to skew towards always trying to offer a valuable solution at the end of the video. And while I said I didn't want to tie this with the usual capitalism bad talking point of leftist video essays, I think this will be at that point, but there's a gigantic glaring problem here. Don't you see the problem here? I'm just part of the problem. You see, the purpose of this video is not to offer an instant solution to this problem, because that will be arrogant on my part and thus I contribute to this problem even further, but rather, what I want to do is interrogate my own arrogance of doing this, and by contributing to the problem of post-truth discourse by attempting to give solutions to problems I have nearly no knowledge about. I am once again a victim of my own Dunning-Kruger Effect, and I don't want to be one anymore. If anything, I tried even to give half-assed solutions like capitalism bad or throw Molotov cocktails around for literal years because of some ethical conundrum I stuck with. But the most ethical thing to do right now is to admit my own ignorance and not further worsen the problem, because, look, this problem is so deeply rooted in our society as a whole, it will take ages to literally root out and pull out and get rid of this misinformation like this, now and never. Learning enough to distinguish even the basic misinformation of the future is not a skill you're going to get overnight, nor in a week, nor in a month. It is something that needs a whole lot of years to achieve, and still you're not knowing all there is about to the world around you. I just started reading some Derrida, and I have yet the reminder of my mortal life to relearn the entirety of Western philosophy at least. And don't even get me started on Eastern philosophy. I'll say this though. My thoughts most of the time, like anybody else's on our beliefs, were what companies like BlackRock or Vanguard decided that day to be our thoughts and beliefs rather than our thoughts of our own. It's the same with anybody. Learning to think for oneself is really hard, but even for myself, it's worth it. And hey, didn't Socrates say a thing about only knowing that he knows nothing? I think, at least, and especially for me, there's an important lesson to learn here. And by not knowing enough, I can just offer you in the future the same learning journey, starting by not knowing and learning together. So, next time, just know you're not immune to propaganda. This video was finally made possible by the support of our newest patrons at the Goon Fund, including Ben Matthew, Daph Eva, Ferrell Galan, and Roberto Lopez. Thank you for watching. Just so you know too, if you want to join them, they're supporting this content financially, go to becomeagoon.today and become one of our patrons for at least $5 a month. I'll see you when a new video comes out and whatever that is.